In South Africa especially, children are not safe. We've got a story of a child that was hijacked from Mozambique.
They just needed someone to be there for them. So I knew that working with children was actually like the real job for me.
We have stories of children leaving and then living on the street and then coming back and say, can you help us?
Some children view Uzwelo Home as a home.
And we want to provide a place where children can be safe.
Hi, Wendy. Tell me something about you and your position with Uzwelo Home, and how did you come to Uzwelo? And
Okay, but I'll start by saying I think my calling was very young. Other people, young people, would put posters of pop stars in a book. I would put stories of family abuse or children that go through traumatized children. So I always had this very deep calling of being a helper or being involved in that field. And so I studied social work, did an honors in social work. And there I got a lot of experience in general family care and also understood what a social worker goes through when she actually has to remove a child and take a child to foster care or to a child and youth care center. I could learn that the therapeutic environment is the whole institution. It is not only therapy, is not only when you come into the social worker's office. Therapy is when you wake up and there's routine and there's discipline. And routine is when we help in the vegetable garden, and that is therapeutic. So it was laid down in my mind that the therapeutic environment is when you walk into the door and when you go to your room and when you play on the grounds. So I had that beautiful opportunity to learn from people that practice that in another setting with rehab alcoholics. But institution-wise, I learned so much from that. We've got a vegetable garden now at Uzwelo Home. I'm pro vegetable gardens within the community, learning crafts, learning to make your own bed. We don't have domestic people, but children learn to do it themselves, and then they have the support of their caring child and youth care workers. So that was so the places where I worked laid the foundation. But there was a significant incident that I haven't told many a times because it's a sacred for me, and that was I was traveling from Ermelo on this very busy road to Piet Retief, and I needed to pick up my children at the bus. And at Icewebe, close where you visited the safe park, there was an accident and a child had run across the street. There was a school on this side and he ran across the street to the cafe, and he was run over and he lay on the tar road and he was dead. And it had just happened, and it was a really shocking experience, traumatic experience for me. And it was as if the Lord had spoken to me, you must get involved with children. And the other thing, it's a matter of life or death if we are not going to get involved. And that was like a turning point where I said, this is my strong calling now. I've learned many things at different places, but children is my thing. And that is where I actually started to focus on children specific. And then I approached Wellspring Ministries, and I said I would volunteer my time at Uzwelo Home. And that is where I started. I started just volunteering, and then I became a social worker, and I had only so many hours, and then it grew. And every time they appointed a manager or a director, and that wouldn't last. And then at one stage I said, I think I have taught so many people to be a manager. I think I will be the manager now. So it was a process of growing. We were at 4 children, then we had 6, and now we've got 54. We had 3 staff members or 6 staff members, and now we've got 22. So I've been through the whole process of growing in my life. And I'm not pro-institutions because that is not good for children. Children need to come, heal, families need to reevaluate their life, and they need to get their act together. And families belong into communities, into families, or into the bigger community. That is the healthy place for children to be. But for a time, if it needs to be that they have to be isolated, trained, healed, receiving therapy, that is the place where we are. And with UROC, it is an interesting thing. I was involved in that as well from the start. The farmers and a forestry company called Mondi found that they had very many orphans, and they didn't know what to do with the orphans. And then they looked for a model, how to serve the children the best. And at that stage, they were looking for an implementing partner, and we thought that would be our community-based arm. That would be our outreach. And we actually thought that those children that were living in the community would become our clients. But because of the services rendered in the community, we received very few. I think I can count 2 children from the community in 17 years that actually came from that specific community where services were rendered. So I take it that those services was good enough to keep children out of institutions. And the services that was rendered was in their best interest. And they need not be. They could be accompanied within families and within communities. I think you've heard the word Ubuntu. That was happening in the rural areas. And they need not to be. Uzwelo Home is the last resort. And when you look at the children's history, you will know that is the last resort. It is not only a child that is merely being neglected, or it's not only a child that has not received food for a short time. It is extremely traumatized children that have been gang raped by family, children that have been abused, gone hungry, and that is the children that we are working with, children that are really traumatized and need special care.
Yeah. Tell me something about you. So, how did you came to Uzwelo, and what is your work there? What is your calling? And what does it mean to you personally?
My name is Siko. I'm 26 years. I came to Uzwelo Home as a 4th year. So when I got there, I was warmly welcomed. It felt like home. And I'm glad because it was a place that accommodated children, that was looking after children. Because I always wanted to work with children, be it at the hospital, but my thing was to work with children.
So, when do you know that this is your calling?
I think working with children was my calling. It has been my calling. Working with children has been my calling. I felt like, the children needed a big sister. They just needed someone to be there for them. So I knew that working with children was actually like the real job for me.
Can you describe a typical day in Uzwelo Home for you and for the children?
It's like coming to work and, catching up with my work from the previous day while they're at school. If I have any session planned, I will just plan it and wait for the children to come back from school. For the children, it's like coming back from school, they greeting, they are all over the office. They're just there to greet, to hug, and we ask them about their day at school, how it was, do they have any homework. It's just that. And for the ones that would want to just come in and sit in the office and just have like a conversation, a general conversation, it's just that. Yes.
And what are your biggest challenges you face in your daily work?
Um, it's, dealing with children that block all the traumatic experiences, that you would want to work with that child, through their healing journey. And they will just, take it as I am home, I'm good, I don't struggle with anything. So we fear that when they get to become adults, they will just, have to relive the experiences, the traumatic experiences. So now it will be difficult for them to be, fully independent adults because they did not deal with the traumatic experiences while they were at the center. Yes.
And which moments are the most difficult for you emotionally?
Oh, I think the one that's memorable for me is when the police officials brought in a child in the evening when everyone had knocked off. We just waited because they had given us a call. So she came in, and, before we could even ask her anything, she just went on what happened and how the police found her. It was, let me just share a little bit. It was a case of sexual abuse where the child was sexually abused by grandparents, non-relatives, but it's just people that she lived with. So they would, lock the door and take turns doing whatever they wanted to do, inappropriate touching. Um, but the one thing that made us weep a little, not in front of the child, obviously, was when a glass of milk excited her. So we offered her a glass of milk and she was so excited. And, we had to offer her a second glass of milk because she was so happy. And we wept because, I mean, how can a glass of milk excite a child to that extent? Yeah.
And what are the small moments that make it all worth it?
Oh, it's when, not all children would notice and recognize the effort that we put into changing their lives. So it's the few children that, that would come to the office on a random day to just say, thank you, mom, and give you a hug and, note and appreciate the effort that we put in their daily lives. Yeah.
What kind of children live in Uzwelo, and what are their backgrounds or stories? You already told a little bit.
Okay.
And how do the children experience life at Uzwelo?
That would actually be a very good question that you would ask the children how they experience life. I think when they're smaller, they just love the playing, the attention, the food, having a mom, going to school. And when they become teenagers, they are just teenagers, like we all know. So it's not always so easy, and they're not always so thankful. And but we do get the exception of students that really see a new future, and they work hard at school, and they've passed matric. And at a certain age, 18, they want to spread their wings, like all other teenagers, and then it's not so easy to keep them until they're ready to leave. And we've received calls, or our manager has received calls at 10 o'clock at night to say, I should have used the opportunity to get my driver's license. I didn't. I am now in Nelspruit, and this company says, if I get my driver's license, I can have a job. Is it possible for you to help me to get a driver's license? And then we would put money in their bank. They would come. We would help them with the driving school. And they would, I wanted to stay for a week or two until they are qualified. And then it's like a beautiful story to say they should have used the opportunity. They didn't. But they know this is home. They can call again and say, Mom, I'm in a difficult position. Can you help me? So we have many such stories. We have stories of children leaving and then living on the street, and then coming back and say, can you help us? I have run out of all my opportunities. I've abused what I've had. Can you help us? We've employed one of our girls that was at Uzwelo. She left. She had a baby. She was living on the street. And we ran through a program with her of training. And she's now employed half day, and her life has turned around. So there are beautiful stories. And we've got a story of a child that was hijacked, child trafficked from Mozambique, northern Mozambique, into South Africa, and then sold to a person in Ermelo. Luckily, there is still the Ubuntu, people still looking out for children, and they could hear her cry. She was locked up in the night, in the day, and they could hear her cry at night when she was abused. And the police then during a day raided the house and found her. And then she came to Uzwelo, and she stayed with us for 4 years. What's 4 years? Yeah. And we tried to trace her family, and we could trace the family at the end. And she went. It was sad when she actually left, because she had become so comfortable here, and she had to learn the language. But she progressed very well at school, and then through the government departments, she went back. It was a whole procedure. There's a lot of legal implications. And until today, she WhatsApps the manager, and she sometimes she will say, "I've got a task at school, and I don't have enough airtime. Could you please help me do the research?" And then I think, is this possible? You're in Mozambique, in a different country, but our vision is that we will help children in need of that live in Africa, because we at a point where Mozambique, Malawi, Swaziland, we in that hotspot. So very often we do get children from Swaziland. We've had a child from Swaziland now recently. A bus was raided by the police, and they were illegal. She was illegal with her mother. Her mother went to jail, and she stayed with us. So we do have that. So we have foreigners, and the children access, all children that are in South Africa are treated the same, medical wise, educational wise. And sometimes the departments forget about that. But the Children's Act is one of the best children's act in the world. And it says all children, even if you come from a different country, have got the same rights. And then we stand on that, and we fight for these children.
To add on what Wendy has mentioned, some children view Uzwelo Home as a home, as a warm home, where my needs are taken care of. I don't have to worry about anything. I'm at a place for the first time that brings peace to my life, and yeah, I can just go through my day without having to worry about anything.
To worry about something is to worry where does the next meal come from, and who's going to my brothers and sisters that are at home, what is going to happen to them, and worrying about school clothes, simple things. So for some, to have our own bed and our own cupboard, and even own clothes. So we don't share clothes. Each child's got their own clothes. Most of the time, it's second-hand clothes. I think the ideal is that sometimes they get new clothes, and they really love that. And they love to go to the storeroom and to choose their own clothes, because they've got no choices. They've got no choice to be there. They've got no choices in life. They've got no choices to actually even decide, I feel like pancake because it's cold today. I like this more than that. And then the mother would make that. There is a story of a boy about in 2011 that, we are close to the railways. And he went, without permission, he went out of Uzwelo after it's 5-6, and he climbed over a railway truck that had wood on and electric cables. If you stand in between electric cables and that, there is a ship. So it went in here and out to his foot. And the police found him there off the railways, and he was he was dying, and they put him in his car. It was Alison, and they took him to a hospital in Piet Retief, and he was all swollen like this. And we said, well, we're going to fight the fight. Hired a private jet, and we flew him to Bloemfontein, where there is a special unit for burn unit. And in the country, there was no place. Because he was also, they said, how many degrees burns does he have? And we said, oh, 3rd degree, 80% of his body. They said, no, let him die. There's no way that we're going to do all of this. And he was in ICU for 40 days, and we took turns. I flew down, I would stay with him, and then the next elder would stay with him, and the next staff would stay with him. And he stayed in hospital for more than 2 years, and he made it.
He made it. Wow, that's a
And at one stage, he said he doesn't want to live anymore, and he does not want treatment, because he had to go to hospital, to the theatre. They had to scrub him. And then that every morning early, my phone was for 2 years, was never off. And for 2 years, they would phone and say, do you give permission for this boy to be scrubbed? And then I said, I'm the guardian. Yes, so you can do that. And it was so painful.
How old was he at this age?
He was 14. And it was, I think, the most horrific when you talk about experience for me, because the only thing that I could recognize him was this part of his arm that was not burnt, and they will always take the skin of this arm to put somewhere else. And I think his one toe was open, and that was all. And he was like a mummy, and he couldn't speak. It was traumatic to actually see him. And then they would have to find skin, artificial skin.
So how do you and your team try to bring joy and safety and trust into their lives?
We always try and make the most out of the little things, be it a birthday party, be it a Christmas party, that other members of the board they contribute towards. So we're just always involved in whatever that they do. Safety, we always ensure that we know each and every child's whereabout. We ensure constant supervision of the children. Yes, we've got transport at Uzwelo Home, so it's in the transport to point B from point A, just like that. Yeah.
Then we've got alarm system, and alarm a company that can be called out at any time. And we've got cameras and beams that can alert us, locking up gates. So those are the things that the board is very much involved, that it is safe. And our vehicles are serviced, so that we travel with good vehicles that are safe. So safety is really very much one of our priorities.
And when it comes to trust, trust cannot be forced. It comes naturally. So we always try and accommodate them as, as children. So when you need to say something to anyone, just know that the door is always open. You're always welcome to come in and sit in to have a conversation. So I think that is another way that we build trust between us and the children.
So if you could change one thing about the current conditions, what would make the biggest difference?
I think one is actually for our children to find families, so that they can belong somewhere, a family where they will just be raised right, and they will feel that this is home and this is family that loves me. Because, everyone deserves a family. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I think I'm talking as management. There are many things, and it's physical things, but it would make the life easier. It would be funds to get a additional tutor for homework, so that school work can improve. It would be funds for an extra vehicle to transport children to special schools in different towns, because mainstream school is not for everybody. So our children have been neglected and not stimulated earlier. So some of them need special schooling. So we would need a second vehicle. We've got an old building that always needs additional maintenance. Our bathrooms need an update. But those are physical things and things that is important. But more important is what happens inside than actually the structure. But it makes it easier because fundraising is not so easy in the economical time that we are living. And in a small town like ours, we've got many organizations that want a cut of the cake. And the dog that barks the harder gets it. We will do our best.
What do you wish for the children once they leave Uzwelo Home?
Well, it's still finding families and, staying connected as the family, always keeping the relationship going. And it is also for them to just work so hard to get the life that they've always wanted for themselves. Yes. And to be the better version of themselves. Yes.
That is lovely. Yeah.
Thank you.
What gives you strength to continue on difficult days?
I believe it's knowing that each day we are a step ahead to changing their lives. And then with us having to slow down, it means that at some point we will fail the children. Yeah.
For me, it is our team. I think we've got a very inspiring team, and everybody contributes. So the energy and the positivity and everybody's outlook. Sometimes when you're down and out, you've got somebody that carries your burdens, and I think we've got a board that is supportive, and when things are difficult, there's a very open relationship. So we've got a board that is strong and stands for the right stuff, and is willing to help.
How do you think our support could make the most meaningful difference for the children?
For me, a bridge is like a crossover to greener pastures. So maybe you guys will be help us cross over to greener pastures. Yeah.
That is lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, she can philosophize and I can put the facts with it. UROC is a project that was born from a need to service children that living in deep rural areas with very little services. So Uzwelo Rural Orphan Care, we call it UROC, renders service to 400, 600 children. And during holidays, we feed 2,400 children once a day. So there are 14 safe parks. And a safe park is just an area where children meet and where they play, and where there is a child and youth care worker that is qualified to supervise. We have 4 safe parks that is a building structure. One of them are containers that has been modified, and a fence where we know children will be safe. And then the others are buildings that have been renovated in such a way that children can play outside, can do homework under roof, where community meetings are held. So Roots and Bridges can play an extremely important role in uplifting and creating facilities where children are safe. If you read our newspapers, in South Africa especially, children are not safe. Children are abused at a rate. Children are murdered. And we want to provide services, yes, but we want to provide a place where children can be safe, where they can learn, where they can play freely, where they can learn new skills, where they can be under supervision in terms of homework. And when I talk about a safe park, sometimes it is an open field with a tree if you're lucky, you get a tree. And that is where they cook food, and that is where they play, and that is where they are supervised. So I think Roots and Bridges got an enormous role to play with continuing this fantastic model. And the model was based on a program called Isibindi, where community members that live in that area became the child and youth care workers. So you know the children, you know their families, you know their needs. That you also know where children that are disabled need to receive services. We have found children that were locked in a hut, tied to a tree. We needed to educate. We needed to help them get to a clinic, to learn them to how to feed these children, to get wheelchairs. So a lot of education has been done. Also, sick children with HIV and AIDS. When you are concerned about these children, there's local clinics where you could actually have these children tested, where they can get medication. If they do not receive their medication, with food, then they're in trouble. And that is so important for us. And I mentioned previously that's a matter of life and death. It is really a matter of life and death. So in South Africa, we have feeding schemes at schools. During holidays, the feeding schemes are closed. Families then have to look after their own children. There are 11 weeks, 12 weeks, that is holidays. During the longest holiday is December. We need money to provide meals. We have been doing that for, I think, 12 years. The Lord has provided enough money to be able to give a meal to each child. Impossible, nearly, because before each holiday, we wonder how it's going to happen. But then it happens. And then food is prepared by the community members. And it's the most nutritional for what we can afford. So it is, I think we've got such a huge task out there. If we've got healthy children, we've got happy children. And we've only got children that are their stomachs are not full. There must be the right nutritional food as well. We want our children, and we've had the results of children attending safe parks, going to school, being part of our program, then going to tertiary institutions, receiving degrees and diplomas, finding jobs. So the quality of life for some have improved. For some, it has not improved, but there are opportunities that we are trying to create. And it would be a great thing if there could be local entrepreneurial training that can be afforded. There are many skills development programs, but the cost thereof in South Africa is extremely expensive. So it must be affordable that families can be able to send their children, or we can have these companies come in and teach the children. Importantly is also vegetable gardens, trying to help families to be sustainable. We are receiving funding from a few companies to get that rolling, but that is important, and teaching community members and children how to do it.